Good morning, students. Welcome to Sai CA Coaching Center, and this is CA MS Swaminathan with you. Students, in furtherance to what we have learned till now, let us move on with the next part of the syllabus in today's session. Then we move on to the components of target costing system, where two significant components are introduced. One, value analysis, and two, value engineering used in target costing. Now, just these two concepts in terms of their methodology are quite, there is some kind of a parallel between these two and what we learned in Six Sigma under the DMAIC and the DMADIV approach. We learned in the Six Sigma that the DMAIC relates to improvement in existing processes, whereas DMADIV related to introducing new processes. Similarly, value analysis basically looks at the current situation, the current material composition, the mixture of the materials in your output, the production design, and what are those modifications and improvements that we could possibly introduce, such that the quality of the product does not diminish. The value, if at all, anything happens to the value, it must only increase, if not constant. So it is relating to an existing product, okay, similar to DMAIC in Six Sigma. Whereas your value engineering relates to applying the value analysis technique to new products, meaning something similar to DMADIV approach, okay. And then the rest would be fairly clear to you. Let's move on from there to the next concept, which deals with your value analysis in engineering and some steps or aspects involved to be understood. Now, there are some bullet points expressed there. Can we, from a value analysis or value engineering concept perspective, what are those aspects that we need to bear in mind? Can we eliminate functions from the production process? When you conduct a value analysis or a value engineering, these are the significant aspects you would want to consider. Can we eliminate functions from the production process? Now, obviously, when you look at a production process, as we have seen, non-value adding activities, why would you want to retain? You would never want to retain it, correct? So you would definitely delete it. Point number one, very simple. Two, can we eliminate some durability or reliability? Now, well, there could be a helmet that is made which will probably protect our head from in the event of any accident, and that helmet costs, for example, 5 lakhs, okay, per helmet. And there is another helmet that is available for 1,500 rupees, which if you hit with a hammer, probably just has a slight dent to the extent of an extremely minor dent. So you conclude that there is no significant risk even if I am going to wear this helmet. Why would you want to go and invest 5 lakh rupees? If you don't want to invest 5 lakh rupees as a customer, where is the direct impact? On the supplier only. So now you look at it from your perspective as a supplier. Would you not want to actually compromise on durability or reliability and start probably to stop supplying the 5 lakh rupee helmet and start to supply the 1,500 rupee helmet, because there is no big difference in the durability aspect of it, correct? So long as significantly it doesn't affect the durability or reliability, there is no problem at all. Then, can we minimize the design? Meaning, now this is a very critical point. There is a particular design that has been implemented to manufacture the product which has certain parts to be used. Now, for example, in your design, if you have a plan where 10 different components will have to be used to manufacture a particular output. Here in this step, when we talk about can we minimize the design, what we are trying to analyze is, instead of having 10 different components, can I just bring it down to 4 or 5 components, which will help me achieve the same purpose. Now it's very nice to say this, bring down the 10 to 5, which means effectively in simple arithmetic language, every 2 parts is being brought down to 1, which means the functionality of 2 different parts must be brought into 1, correct? Just like, for example, saying there is a separate equipment which is purely a calculator, and there is a separate equipment which is purely a mobile which does not have a calculator functionality, but now we connect the two and we introduce a new product in the market which is a new mobile, which also helps us make phone calls, receive phone calls, as well as do calculations. Now, When we suppose a calculator costs us 100 rupees, a pure mobile without the calculator functionality costs you, for example, 5,000 rupees. You can buy both of them for 5,100. Now let's assume one of you introduce a new calculator model in the market for the first time, which has the calculator facility as well, and you price it at 11,000 rupees. Which intelligent soul will come and buy this product from you? Why? I can simply go to the market and get a calculator for 100 rupees, a separate cell of the same functionality for 5,000 rupees, and close the issue at 5,100. Why would I want to spend extra amount and thereby incur 11,000 totally? Correct? So you have to bear the cost benefit analysis, because when you want to minimize one product which is being introduced now to substitute the earlier two must have an increased functionality, a more sophisticated technology, which means there will be an extra cost, and you might possibly have to get it tailor-made for you from a supplier. When it is tailor-made, it might cost you more money as well. So having that in mind, decide whether it is worthwhile to go ahead with this particular process or not. Can we design the next step? Can we design the product better for the manufacturing process? Now, this concept, you have to read it very carefully. The first sentence I'm just reading, also known as design for manufacture and assembly. This involves a creation of a product design that can be created in only a specific manner. Now, when you say in a specific manner, it does not permit another way of doing it for various reasons. Now, again, let me give you an example away from the costing perspective. In a specific manner, there is an example listed in the book which is very good. Nevertheless, now in today's scenario, we find that well, I'm not much aware of motorbikes, but then about a scooter. The current generation of scooters that are being introduced in the market do not, from what I know, do not start. They don't get ignited, okay, unless the brake is also being applied simultaneously when you try to press the start button. When you try to press the start button, the ignition doesn't get turned on unless the brake is also being pressed. It's a very, very, very significant change from a safety perspective that has been introduced in the market. Some of them probably might accelerate and meet with an accident. So the fact that the brake is functioning properly is checked right at the start. Now, I don't understand why this philosophy is still not introduced in four-wheeler segment, maybe for some valid reasons. But then the point is, the two-wheeler, which is a scooter, is made to start in a specific manner. Only if you press the brake will the scooter start when you are using the press key, the start button. Correct? This is all that we're trying to say. When you design, can you find out that is there a better way of doing it? Meaning, the better way means if you try to wrongly assemble something, there are, let's say, four components to be assembled to make your end product. If you assemble them either in the wrong order or in the wrong direction, then automatically there is a safety valve in the compiling process or the assembling process which doesn't permit you to go ahead itself. It stops you there itself, indicating to you you are not actually assembling it in the appropriate manner. Now, what is the impact for us from a target cost perspective or a cost reduction perspective? Just imagine if you go ahead with assembling it wrongly, okay, and then you notice at the end of it, then obviously there is a time involved in now disassembling what you've done. There is an unnecessary loss of time, correct? The earlier time you invested is not an investment, it's a waste. So the wages that are being paid to you is paid more as a charity on top of it. When you try to disassemble it, probably there could be a breakage as well because it has got locked in an inappropriate manner. Possibly there could be a damage as well arising. All these things could probably be avoided if you have this kind of a safety feature. For example, some cars, for example, they don't stop making that noise unless the seat belt is fastened. Possibly you can have a situation where a car should not even start if the seat belt is not being fastened. Possibly something like that is what is covered in this point. The next one deals with can we substitute parts. Okay, can we substitute parts, which is self-explanatory. Can you find out better ways, cheaper products? But then please bear in mind not to compromise on the quality. Correct? So you can have probably better ways of doing things. That's one possible thing available. Can we substitute parts? For example, if you're feeling thirsty, instead of giving you water, probably juice could be given to you. But then instead of giving you water, if someone were to come and give you food, would that quench your thirst? No. So it has to be substitute which still serves the purpose, at least at the earlier level. Okay. Then you move on to the next point, which talks about can we combine steps. Now here, actually what happens is, while the study material is quite clear with regard to can we combine steps paragraph, let me again give you one example which is a little away from this one in terms of an accounting example. Now in accounting, from a journal entry perspective, we have simple journal entries as well as compound journal entries. Why don't we pass 4 different simple journal entries? Don't we say that I would rather prefer to pass one combined journal entry itself? It saves the time, it saves the effort, it saves money as well, correct? Something like that occurs even over here. Can we combine steps? Now obviously when you have 2 journal entries which can't be combined at all, there, would you ever dare to try for a combined journal entry? No. So if it is going to be something which is not of the like type, you can't. Something which is of the same type where you could combine, there, yes, you would probably look at measures to combine and reduce the cost. Then the next point talks about can we take suppliers assistance. Now remember, when you talk about target costing, at the end of the day, you are looking at cost minimization. How can you imagine that you will introduce cost minimization by ignoring value chain analysis, etc.? When you talk about value chain analysis, you're looking at it from end to end, which you've learned from the first chapter. It also automatically involves supply chain management. Therefore, whatever you try to, your total cost has to be minimized, which means if you're procuring raw materials from outside, that cost also probably could be minimized, which means if you can involve your suppliers right at the start in terms of early discussions, probably they could help you even by, from their perspective, by lowering their cost, maybe because of research, maybe because of target costing at their end. They could probably supply items to you at a lower price, and you could in turn pass it on the benefit to the customer as well. Then the last one, is there a better way, which is kind of revolutionizing. Rather than looking at the existing systems, what are the new things that can be innovated and done to achieve better results is what we look at here. From there, we move on to the next point, which deals with the initial value engineering may not uncover all possible cost savings. On page 12, there's a very significant point. When value engineering is undertaken with regard to new products, it is done initially. Now, we need the result to be benefiting us on a consistent basis and not just as a one-time exercise. Correct? One-time exercise is good as a startup, as a starting point, but it should consistently remain. Any use if you start a car which gets started but refuses to run? No use. Is there any use in you having covered your entire strategic cost management and performance evaluation in a matter of 10 days today by sitting for 24 hours, and then for the next 5 months you don't touch the book and directly go to the examination center to take the exam? What do you say? I want to consistently remain in touch with my subject. So you just don't want initial value engineering, you also want it to remain consistently with you. So one-time exercise helps you derive the benefits only at that point in time. If you want it to be operated on a sustainable basis, you have to constantly keep repeating the process, which is done or facilitated through the Kaizen costing system, which we learned in chapter 2, correct, or chapter 3, Kaizen costing system. So which is small initiatives that you take, process improvements which will contribute in a small way to your kitty, but then, as I said to you, it is the small drops of water which make up the mighty ocean. Small such savings being contributed over a long period of time will certainly yield sustainable margins and help you remain competitive in the market and sustain the life of your product. Okay. Then we move on from there to, there are different approaches to the cost reduction as well. Either you look at it from the viewpoint of just reducing the existing cost or introducing better designs from the design team perspective. That aspect you can read from your study material. Now, please also bear in mind this target costing, again, like your TQM or your TPM or your Six Sigma, BPR, will have to be operated not on a silo basis. Employees can't operate in silos. They will have to come together as a collective team. The senior management will have to be very, very supportive of this, and therefore we now move on from here to understand certain problems involved in target costing. Okay. Now, the very first thing is the development process can be lengthened to a considerable extent since the design team may require a number of design iterations. Iterations is what? Versions. Before it can devise a sufficiently low cost product that meets the target cost. So, in the process of trying to bring down your cost from 89 to 85, 4 rupee, you might have to redo. So much of time is involved, probably can even be frustrating. Just as we say when we take up a study material, revising one time is just not sufficient. Have you revised it the second time, the third time, the fourth time, you become more and more convenient. The more and more you want to revise, the more and more the time you also need. Correct? It should be at your disposal. So time factor should not be ignored. In a way, something which is going to be a very, very long drawn effort, you might even shell the project, drop the project. Otherwise, you must have a clear timeline within which it must yield the result. Otherwise, shelve it, drop it, and take it up at a future date when the internal environment would probably be more conducive. The second point, a large amount of mandatory cost cutting can result in finger pointing in various parts of the company. Whenever a cost cut is being introduced, people are being asked to reduce their costs. Who feels very happy? When you are used to spending 100 rupees a day and now you are being told you are now permitted to spend only 99, do you feel very happy? Immediately you start pointing a finger at your brother or sister saying he or she is responsible for that extra thing. Why are you taking that 1 rupee away from me? That's exactly what happens here. The third point, representatives from a number of departments of the design team can sometimes make it more difficult to reach a consensus on the proper design. Have we not heard a phrase, an adage in English? Too many cooks spoil the broth. Similarly, if there are too many people who are going to be involved in giving their opinion, finished. No consensus can ever be reached. At some point, a decision will have to be taken. It will definitely imply that the decision might not be unanimous. Some of them might not be favoring the decision, but still the decision is taken in the overall interest of the organization. Then effective implementation, the next point, and use requires the development of a detailed cost data. Obviously, you must be able to gather all sorts of cost data, probably even activity based cost in great detail to facilitate target costing implementation. So a lot of investment will have to be made in such kind of cost accounting systems. Next point, use of target costing may reduce the quality of products due to the use of cheap components which may be of inferior quality. Well, this point will be valid only if adequate or appropriate attention is not paid to it. Otherwise, the funda of target costing itself is the quality must never be allowed to be compromised. So if there is going to be a laxative attitude, then probably this might arise. So be watchful about that. Ultimately, one thing which is very essential is there must be a person who must be nominated as the project in charge from a target costing perspective, and that person must be one who's kind of a dominating character or a good team leader. He or she must have very good interpersonal skills, must be able to actually enforce his decision as well or her decision. Otherwise, the team will never make a progress and the project will never come to closure. Then you have the management accountant's role in target costing environment. Well, this part, rather than going point by point, all that I would like to tell you is there is a design team on one side which is trying to introduce the target costing. There is a finance team in the organization the other side. Now, this design team is purely technical in nature. Pure technical people will have to be supported in financial terms as well, by which I mean they must be told well with regard to the different ideas that you are throwing up in terms of cost reduction. How does it exactly translate into numbers? There must be someone who is doing the job. Whatever ideas you're throwing up, I will convert it into numbers sitting over here and come back to you and tell you, because you may not be appreciating the way variable cost behave, the way fixed cost behave. I will gather all that information, capital budgeting related information, and let you know your alternative one will have this kind of an impact on the cost. Alternative two will have this kind of an impact in cost, and then you sit and decide. This is something like in the software industry, you have the business which requires a software to be implemented. There is this technical people like this TCS and Wipro who are completely the so-called techies who don't understand effectively the financial impact. They only understand the coding language. They can only code. Therefore, the business people, the functional people, the purchase department, the sales department, the marketing department, the finance department of the customer sits with the technical guy, of course, but then not directly, through someone who will be an intermediary. That intermediary is one from the software industry who is able to understand the business requirement from a finance perspective, from a taxation perspective, from an accounting perspective, from an inventory perspective, and will also be able to communicate it appropriate to the techie guy. If you remove this intermediary, the functional guy, the purchase manager or the inventory manager and the techie will be clueless. It is something like, I am talking in German with you. You know nothing about German. You know only Russian. What will be the use of this conversation unless there is a translator? So that's something which is very important. That role is played by the management accountant. You can read. He plays a very pivotal role in trying to make them understand what will be the financial impact and helping them also with all sorts of financial data that they need. And of course, supplying the top management with all sorts of information, risk analysis towards this target costing perspective. Okay, you can read that part. Hopefully, it will be clear to you. Then we move on to impact of target costing on profitability. Of course, it is something which is market driven. Helps it's to be done on a continual basis. Correct. Point one, two. If the prices are being targeted appropriately, it helps you to maintain sustainability in the market. Now, from there, you move on to the traditional costing and the target costing. There's a chart given in the study material, which is very nice and self-explanatory. Now, there is a small segment which talks about target costing data flow. How should the data flow in target costing in terms of what are all the data that you need, from where will you get it? Obviously, it will be derived from the central database, the accounting system, and the cost accountant will also be expected to provide the best estimate, because when you start with a new product, how you are trying to find out the anticipated selling price and then the anticipated selling profit margin. After being subtracted from the anticipated selling price, you arrive at the target cost. So the cost accountant must be able to then justify and present what would be the best basis of arriving at the cost, probably even a worst case scenario wherein the highest cost could be something. Why would this information be presented to the top management? Just to make them realize the risk involved in case the best scenario is not met with. And is it worthwhile taking up that risk or probably not? So that's something. Some information can be gathered even from the competitors or probably even from the customers. Some can be obtained even from the design team involved in the organization, and some from the accounting staff or the engineering staff. I guess those points are fairly clear as well. Let's move on to the next segment, which deals with useful situations. These are types of industries where target costing is useful. I guess I can move on to the next part, which deals with target costing control points. Now, obviously, When a particular concept as important, an activity which is as important as target costing is being implemented in an organization, obviously we understand and appreciate that some control mechanisms must be there in place, correct? Otherwise, how do you know whether it is being implemented properly? So there are certain aspects which are being covered here. One, which is identification of principal control point. What should be that particular point, which should be the central point of control? Whatever be it, depending on the industry, where you would know, should I shelve the project or should I go ahead with it? What is it? Okay, which will obviously take you to the next point. Once the principal point of control is able to provide that information, the second point highlights what decision do we take? Should we shelve the project or go ahead? Probably, maybe abandon it. If not, if we go ahead with it, are we expecting to see the benefits in the near term? Possibly that. And then you also have the milestone in terms of how do you measure the progress? What are those key points at which you will try to measure the progress? Just like as how when you prepare for your examination, you might be having a plan. Every week I have to cover this much of my portion. So that's your milestone. So it could be time based, it could also be process based, depending on what suits you. Then we move on to the next concept, which deals with implementing a target costing system. Now, of course, when we try to introduce a target costing system, there are certain prerequisites that would be required. A couple of them are create a project charter. Obviously, the very first thing is what will be the goal of this target costing system that we intend to implement. So that it has to be clearly documented. What would be the overall vision of the company and how does this target costing system fit in there? Now, when it is officially documented, it becomes all the more sacred in the organization. Otherwise, it will just be like a verbal agreement and not a formal written agreement. So you have a clear document, a formal document that highlights the purpose, the objective of implementing the target costing system. After that is done, from the top management, there has to be one person who should be totally committed to the activity of implementing target costing system. Why is this important? As we have learned several times in the past, unless the senior management is supportive of such kind of initiatives, it will definitely not take off and the entity or the organization cannot reap the benefit of it. There are huge benefits that can be derived out of target costing implementation. So top management support is very, very important. Who will be able to resolve several issues, if anything, which will arise. 3, obtain a budget. A financial support will obviously be required. So a clear formal line of credit in terms of money allocation must be made by the top management to support target costing implementation. It should not be something which is provided temporarily, I mean, on a discretionary basis. If we want, we will provide. The moment we feel it is not satisfactory, we will withdraw the support. It shouldn't be hanging in suspension like that. It should be a clear and a firm amount that has been committed to the cause of target costing implementation. Then you have assign a strong team manager, which we've discussed even in the past. If the leader is not going to be strong and good at interpersonal skills and an effective communicator, then obviously the central point of contact itself will be weak, on account of which the team will probably not function at the optimal level. There would be a lot of issues arising, administrative issues involving unnecessary wastage of time. Enroll full-time participants is the next point. Target costing assuming a lot of significance, providing so much of benefit to organizations will obviously require in full justice that those participants who are being allotted for this activity must make themselves available on a full-time basis, not on a part-time basis. Because if they are going to be there on a part-time basis, don't know when they will be pulled out of that activity and therefore can cause unnecessary hiccups in implementing the target costing system. And then the last one would be using various tools, your statistical tools, project management tools to implement target costing system. Next, you have a problem and probably a case study which you can do. Hopefully, these concepts will help you answer those. And then on page 23, we note that there is another concept called life cycle costing. I would not proceed with that now. This is kept for the next day session, which will include from here till the end of the chapter, hopefully. Bye.